She woke to a voice in her room that sounded like her own, whispering, "You broke the rules." The lamp was off. The phone screen was on. The lock screen showed a photo she never took her sleeping face. Ayla Khan didn't scream. She counted to 5 and felt the fear move through her ribcage like a slow wave instead of a knife. The shock was clean, bright, and wrong. Someone had turned her silence into an audience. Ayla believed in small rituals. Tea before sunrise. A short prayer on the balcony. The soft click of her journal closing. She was not perfect. She overthought, forgave too fast, and apologized to furniture she bumped into. But for months, she had been trying to become someone spiritually stronger, someone who didn't mistake obedience for peace. That was why the photo hurt. It told her the most private place in her life had been watched. And it told her the watcher thought she wouldn't fight back. She checked the door. The deadbolt was still turned. The windows were still latched. The only wrong thing in the apartment was the feeling. It had weight, like a wet coat hung on her bones. She set the phone down and took a breath that tasted like cold dust and last night's rain. A message arrived beneath the photo. "You won't tolerate this, right?" Prove it. Kareem would have laughed at that. The old boyfriend who translated control into care. He used to say boundaries were closed hearts pretending to be wise. With him, Ayla learned the dangerous trick of calling surrender a virtue. She left 6 months ago with a small suitcase and a broken habit of explaining everything. Since then, she made rules the way a gardener makes fences, not to keep life out, but to help it grow. Rule 1. No one enters without respect. Rule 2. Silence is holy only when it heals. Rule 3. Faith isn't fear wearing perfume. She flicked on the lamp. The light made the room honest. Her little plants leaned toward the window like hopeful listeners. She checked the camera app and found nothing but sleep. She checked the cloud and found the photo sitting by itself, a single cold moon in a dark folder. Whoever took it had hands that liked trophies. Ayla deleted the image, then paused, then undeleted it. Evidence belonged with its story. She showered with the bathroom door cracked, listening. In the mirror, steam blurred her outline into something softer, like a person unlearning a script. After she dressed, she called her neighbor, Noor, a medical student with a quick laugh and a careful mind. "Can I borrow your spare set of nerves?" Ayla asked. "What happened?" "Someone watched me sleep." Or pretended to. Noor came with a flashlight and a firm hug. Together they checked the windows, the door frame, the vent cover, even the thin gap behind the fridge where old receipts retire. Nothing. "Could be a prank app," Noor said. "Could be Kareem, if he's still as theatrical as you said." Ayla nodded. "He used to stage scenes, but I changed the locks. And I'm not the woman who hands him my fear to decorate." She tried to smile. It held Dot at work. Ayla managed an office at a small counseling center. People arrived with stories, half-whispered, eyes busy with shame. She made coffee, fixed the printer that believed in chaos, and spoke in a voice that sounded like a hallway light. By noon, she stopped pretending she wasn't shaken. She sat in the supply closet, texted herself a promise, and read it 3 times. "I will not worship quiet if quiet protects cruelty." Client named Layla cried about a boyfriend who punished her with long silences. "He says silence is sacred," Layla said. "It is," Ayla answered, "when it heals, not when it hides knives." She felt the words land in her own chest like medicine she finally swallowed. Outside, rain returned thin and patient. Ayla bought bread and stood under the bus shelter while the city whispered. A man in a gray hoodie lingered too near. She saw his reflection in the glass. He was just a man waiting for a bus. Fear keeps inventing wolves because once it saved your life. She thanked the old instinct and didn't let it drive. Back in her building, an envelope waited under her door. Inside, A printed sheet titled 10 Things the Spiritually Aware Never Tolerate. The items were blank, 10 numbered lines like open mouths. At the bottom, in tiny letters, "Fill this in or I will." Her skin prickled. Kareem loved games that ended with him defying truth for both of them. She brewed rosemary tea and sat at the table. The tea bag string curled like a question mark. Fine, she thought. I'll fill it in. But it won't be for you. She wrote. 1. Gaslighting dressed as love. 2. Secrets that demand my silence. 3. Debt that isn't mine. 4. Spiritual words used like rope. 5. Apologies that rent a room and never leave. 6. Pity that asks me to shrink. 7. Quiet that feels like a trap. 8. Help with a leash. 9. Promises that hate daylight. 10. Any story where I lose myself to keep the peace. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Good list. Brave list. Bring it to the balcony. She refused the command and opened the balcony door on her own time, stepping into air that smelled like steel and wet leaves. The city glittered. Her hands did not shake. She spoke to the night as if the person were standing there. I'm not your echo. Find a mirror. Down on the street, someone turned and looked up. She couldn't see his face, just a posture trained to witness. The figure lingered, then moved on. Power shifted by inches you cannot brag about. She closed the door and locked it. Small victories matter to a nervous system. They are bread for the starving. Nor texted. I left a door alarm on your mat. Peel and stick. It screams. Isla laughed, stuck the thing above the frame, and tested it. The sound was rude and perfect. Night felt less like a test after that. She slept with the lamp on and dreamed of a staircase made of glass. Every step sang. At the top, a child version of herself waited, holding the blank list. The child said, "Write my name first." Ayla woke with tears on her pillow and understood. The first thing the spiritually aware never tolerate is their own abandonment. Morning came honest and a little kind. She stretched, brewed coffee, and unlocked her phone. A final message waited. Prove you're strong. Tell me the worst thing you'll never accept again. Ayla typed. I won't accept a love that needs me to disappear. She didn't send it to him. She texted it to herself, pinned it to the top, and read it aloud until the words fit her mouth like armor. On the way out, she placed the filled list back in the envelope and slid it under her own welcome mat. She wasn't returning it. She was burying a ritual. In the hallway, she met the man from the bus shelter, now carrying groceries and an apology in his eyes. I live 2 floors down, he said, shy. Didn't mean to scare you. You didn't, she said, and meant it. I'm learning how to hear the difference. When she reached the street, the city didn't look like a crime scene anymore. It looked like a map drawn by someone who wanted her to arrive. She lifted her face to the rain and felt it cool her fear into something almost brave. Somewhere, a watcher would be disappointed. Somewhere, a door alarm waited to scream for her. Somewhere, a new day let her practice what strong really meant. Not hardness, not walls, but the quiet refusal to disappear. Ayla stopped checking her phone for messages after that night. She wanted to starve the ghost of attention, to let silence be her firewall. But silence is a strange creature. When you feed it, it starts speaking in symbols instead of words. On Tuesday, she found her balcony door open. Not broken, not forced, just open, like an invitation written in air. The wind had knocked over her little plant, the one she called Grace. Soil scattered across the tile like a small crime scene. She crouched to sweep it up and noticed something under the pot, a folded paper, edges damp. She unfolded it with slow hands. It read, You forgot number 11. Her breath caught. She looked around, scanning rooftops, windows, corners of the courtyard below. No one stared back. The world was too ordinary for how terrifying it felt. Number 11. She'd written 10 things on that list, 10 boundaries, 10 rules. What could number 11 be? At the counseling center that day, she asked her colleague, Dr. Mina, a quiet woman who always smelled of jasmine tea, "Can boundaries haunt you?" Mina smiled gently. "Boundaries don't haunt. The people who violated them do. What if they're not visible anymore? Then your mind paints their shadow. That's trauma trying to protect you." Ayla nodded, though the explanation didn't erase the chill on her skin. After work, she stopped at a bookstore, the kind that sold more incense than books. The owner, an elderly man with deep eyes, asked, "Looking for light or reflection?" "Reflection," she said. He handed her a small journal bound in dark green leather. "For thoughts too heavy for your phone," he said. That night, she began writing. Not affirmations, not prayers, just facts. Fact. Fear sounds like footsteps that stop too soon. Fact. Control always arrives politely before it devours you. Fact. Number 11 might not be a threat. It might be a test. The motion alarm Noor had installed never blinked. The red light stayed steady. Yet Ayla felt watched. Maybe not by Kareem, maybe not even by a person, but by an idea of herself she hadn't yet met. The version who didn't run, didn't flinch, didn't tolerate fear disguised as destiny. She sat on the floor, staring at her reflection in the balcony glass. Behind her, the city lights flickered like cautious stars. She whispered, "What is number 11?" The reflection smiled before she did. That scared her more than any note could. The next day, Noor dropped by with muffins and nervous energy. "You look like you're solving a murder," she said. "Maybe I am," Ayla replied. "Whose?" "Mine," before she learned to fight. They sat together on the couch, talking about small things, bills, weather, Noor's exams, but the air felt thick with unspoken questions. Noor finally asked, "Are you sure it's Kareem? I mean, what if it's someone else?" Ayla hesitated. "He used to quote Rumi while he was gaslighting me. Whoever wrote that note knows my patterns. They're using my language against me." Noor frowned. "Then you change the language. How?" "Stop being poetic about your pain. Start being blunt." That night, Ayla taped a note to the inside of her front door. It read, "I see you. You don't scare me. But I will end this." It wasn't for whoever was leaving messages. It was for herself. She woke at 3:14 a.m. to a sound, a faint metallic click, like something brushing the new lock. The door alarm screamed. Her heart shot up her throat. She grabbed her phone, flashlight on, camera ready, breath shallow. Footsteps retreated down the hall. She ran to the peephole. A shadow moved toward the stairs, hooded, tall, steady. She snapped a picture through the glass. The flash lit the corridor for a second too bright. Too short. The photo showed nothing but white glare and the faint outline of her own hand. She shut the door, locked it twice, and sank to the floor. Fear used to make her cry. Now it just made her angry. By morning, she'd printed the photo anyway, taped it to her wall beside the old 10 things list. She stared at both until a pattern formed. The smudge at the photo's edge looked like 2 lines crossing, a shape almost like an 11. She whispered, "You want me to name it?" "Fine." On the page below the list, she wrote, 11. I will not tolerate silence that demands obedience. Something eased in her shoulders, as if the air itself had been waiting for that answer. Her phone pinged once. No number. Good. Now prove it. Instead of calling the police, she called herself to the task. She went downstairs to the security office, a place she'd avoided before. A middle-aged guard named Rahim greeted her kindly. She showed him the messages and the envelope. He squinted. You're not the first tenant to get these weird letters. Her stomach dropped. Who else? A woman from the third floor. She moved out last month. Same handwriting. Can you show me the footage from last night? He rewound the camera until 3:14 a.m. They watched in silence. A tall figure appeared, but this time, Ayla saw something she hadn't expected. The hooded person stopped at her door, took out a folded paper, and slipped it into the frame. Then, they stepped back and looked directly into the camera lens. Thought it wasn't Karim. It was a woman. Her breath hitched. Noor's warning echoed in her head. What if it's someone else? The woman's features were hard to read in the black and white footage, but her posture was familiar, like someone used to being invisible. Can you print that frame? Ayla asked. Rahim nodded. Be careful, miss. Whoever she is, she knows this building better than I do. That night, Ayla taped a photo of the woman beside her list. She didn't feel fear. She felt a strange, quiet pity. Someone was obsessed with testing her strength, but maybe that someone was another survivor of the same darkness. She opened her journal and wrote, maybe number 11 isn't about the intruder. Maybe it's about recognizing pain in someone else's disguise. Still, she didn't unlock the balcony door. Growth and boundaries could coexist. Before bed, she whispered her new mantra. Spiritually strong doesn't mean untouched. It means unbound. The next morning, the balcony was closed. The air was still, and for the first time in weeks, the quiet didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a teacher pausing to see if she'd learned her lesson. By Thursday, Ayla's apartment smelled of fear and rosemary tea. Fear because she could feel someone's gaze in her walls, and rosemary because she refused to let it win. The printed photo of the hooded woman stared from the wall beside her list. Ayla had begun calling her the Watcher, not to humanize her, but to give her form. Naming something steals a little of its power. The list of 10 things the spiritually aware never tolerate had changed since last week. Every night, Ayla reread it, her handwriting trembling a little less. Number 11 glared at the bottom like a warning bell. I will not tolerate silence that demands obedience. That morning, Ayla found a small white feather on her doorstep. Clean, perfect, unnatural. A message dressed as innocence. She picked it up carefully and placed it beside the list. Then she opened her journal and wrote, a manipulator's favorite disguise is concern. They don't hurt you outright. They invite you to trust what feels safe. At the counseling center, Ayla couldn't focus. A client named Miriam was talking about her husband's emotional fasting, how he would withdraw for weeks, then return with flowers. Ayla nodded, but her mind kept circling that feather. When the session ended, Dr. Mina noticed her distraction. You're half here, half haunted, she said softly. Whatever this is, you need to close it soon. Half-open wounds attract repetition. I'm trying, Ayla said. No, Mina corrected. You're enduring. Try ending. That evening, Noor came over with 2 coffees. We should talk about the camera footage again, she said. I have a theory. Please say it's not Karim in disguise. It's worse, Noor said. Look at this. She opened her laptop and zoomed into the footage Rahim had printed. The woman's profile was clearer now. The tilt of her chin, the softness of her jaw. Noor turned the screen toward her friend. Ayla froze. The face looked eerily like her own. The same height. The same build. Even the same curve of hair slipping under the hood. That's impossible, Ayla whispered. It's not me. I was inside. Maybe it's someone who wants to be you, Noor said. Or someone who's studying me, Ayla murmured. Her phone buzzed just then. A new message. You're closer than you think. Her hands went cold. Noor took the phone from her. We should call the police again. They'll tell me it's imagination, Ayla said. They already did. Noor sighed. Then we make her reveal herself. They set up a small trap. A motion camera hidden near the door, angled toward the hallway. Noor would stay in the car downstairs with a clear view of the entrance. If the watcher returned, they'd have evidence, and maybe a face. Midnight came quietly. The kind of quiet that sounds like breathing. Ayla sat on her couch, pretending to read, her phone in her lap. Noor's live feed opened at 12:47 a.m. Movement. A dark shape entered the hallway. Ayla's pulse hammered in her ears. Noor texted, "She's back. Don't move." The woman approached the door, paused, then pressed something into the crack again. Another note. She looked straight into the camera, lifted her head, and for the first time, the hood fell back. Ayla's heart stopped. It wasn't Kareem. It wasn't a stranger. It was Dr. Mina. The world tilted. Every piece of advice, every comforting word, all of it suddenly lined with teeth. Ayla's breathing turned shallow. Noor ran upstairs as Ayla yanked open the door. The hallway was empty. Only a single folded note left behind. Her fingers shook as she opened it. "You're still tolerating the wrong kind of silence." Noor arrived breathless. "Where is she?" "She left." "Who?" "My therapist." Noor's jaw tightened. "You're kidding." "I wish I was." They sat on the couch, the air thick with disbelief. Ayla replayed every session in her mind. How Mina had always encouraged her to sit with discomfort. How she'd asked Ayla to write her fears instead of confronting them. "She wasn't helping me heal," Ayla said slowly. "She was collecting data." The next morning, Ayla went to the counseling center, trembling but determined. Mina was in her office, watering plants as if nothing had happened. She looked up with that calm, knowing smile. "Ayla, you look exhausted." "You were at my apartment last night," Ayla said. Mina tilted her head. "That's a heavy accusation. I have footage. Show me." Ayla placed the phone on the desk and pressed play. Mina watched herself on the screen, hood down, note in hand, and smiled faintly. "You see monsters where there are mirrors," she said. "What does that mean?" "You created me," Mina whispered. "Every question I asked, every word you heard, it came from what you already feared." Ayla took a step back. "You're lying." "Am I?" Mina asked. "You said you wanted to meet your shadow self." "I just gave her a name." Ayla's throat closed. "You broke into my home." "I entered a space you never protected," Mina said, her voice calm, unblinking. "You invited me by needing validation more than truth." Something inside Ayla snapped, not in anger, but clarity. "You think you're teaching me awareness," she said. "But you're feeding on the same control Kareem used. You wear wisdom like a mask to hide your power trip." Mina smirked. "And now you sound like me. Congratulations. You've learned." Ayla turned to leave. "You don't get to define my growth anymore." Outside, she collapsed against the wall, shaking. Noor met her there, wrapping an arm around her. "Did she admit it?" "Worse," Ayla said. "She thinks she is my growth." Noor looked confused. "So what now?" "Now," Ayla said, "I stop explaining." That night, she deleted Mina's number, blocked her email, and burned the feather in her sink. Smoke curled like punctuation at the end of a long, cruel sentence. She poured the ashes into the wind. For the first time, she didn't feel afraid of silence. She felt it waiting, respectfully, for her next move. The morning after Ayla confronted Mina, she didn't wake up in fear. She woke up in stillness. Not the kind that used to feel like surveillance, but the kind that made her realize something profound. Peace isn't quiet because nothing's wrong. Peace is quiet because nothing needs your reaction. She brewed her tea slowly, listening to the clink of the spoon against the cup. The air in her apartment felt lighter, as if the walls themselves had exhaled. Her phone was full of unread messages. Noor checking in. The counseling center asking about her sudden resignation and one anonymous text that said only, "Truth costs less than pretending." She didn't reply. She didn't delete it either. Not every loose end needs closure. Some just need distance. Later that afternoon, she met Noor at the Riverside Cafe, where they used to talk about life like it was a puzzle meant to be solved. "You're glowing," Noor said, half teasing. "I'm empty," Ayla corrected with a smile. "But the good kind." Noor stirred her coffee. "Did you tell the police?" "I gave them the footage. They said they'll investigate. But I'm not waiting for an apology or a trial." "Then what are you waiting for?" "For my piece to stop asking for permission." They sat in silence, the kind that felt earned. The river shimmered under weak sunlight, carrying leaves and secrets away. For the first time in months, Ayla didn't feel watched. She felt witnessed by herself. That evening, she returned home and began cleaning. Not to erase the past, but to claim space again. The walls didn't hum. The balcony door stayed shut. The mirror no longer reflected fear when she reached the table where her old 10 things listed hung. She noticed a corner curling upward. The ink had faded slightly, but the words were still clear, still hers. She smiled and took the pen dot at the bottom, under number 11. She added, 12. I will not tolerate anyone, including myself, mistaking peace for submission. Then, she folded the paper carefully and placed it in the green leather journal the bookstore owner had given her. When she closed it, it sounded like a door locking, not to keep things out, but to keep strength in. The next morning, she went back to the counseling center. Not as an employee, not as a victim. As a witness, Mina was there, sitting in her office as if nothing had happened. Calm, composed, the predator disguised as a teacher. Ayla stood at the doorway and said quietly, I came to say thank you. Mina looked up, surprised. For what? For reminding me that some people mistake control for guidance. Mina's smile was faint. So you learned something after all. Yes, Ayla said. That the spiritually aware don't tolerate false light pretending to lead the way. She turned to leave, but before she did, she placed a small white envelope on the desk. Inside was a copy of the video and a single line. Even darkness needs therapy. Mina's face went pale. For the first time, the silence in that room didn't belong to Mina. It belonged to Ayla. Outside, the air tasted of rain and renewal. Noor waited by the car, smiling. So? I left her a mirror, Ayla said. You think she'd change? Maybe not. But I did. They drove in silence, the radio playing softly. Ayla looked out the window at the city lights, each one a tiny heartbeat in the distance. She remembered how she used to mistake stillness for emptiness, how she once apologized for taking up emotional space. Not anymore. Now she understood the truth. Spiritually strong people don't reject the darkness. They respect it enough to know when to walk away from its illusion of warmth. That night, Ayla sat on her balcony, notebook open, pen steady. She wrote her final entry. The spiritually aware never tolerate manipulation masked as love. They never mistake guilt for guidance or silence for surrender. They forgive quietly, but never forget the lesson. Because awareness is not softness, it's light with a backbone. When she finished writing, she closed the journal, placed it on the windowsill, and smiled. For once, she didn't need to check if someone was watching. She knew. She was the observer now. A gust of wind blew across her face, scattering the old ashes of burned notes into the night. The city breathed with her. The silence was no longer something to fear. It was something to protect. She whispered one last thing to the darkness, her voice soft but certain. I don't just survive in silence anymore. I lead it. And if anyone had been listening from a window, from the shadows, from the echoes of the past, they would have heard it too. The sound of a woman who refused to disappear. The sound of awareness winning its own war. If this story moved you, Subscribe for more tales of dark psychology, human emotion, and quiet strength. Share this video and remind someone today, not every calm person is weak. Some are just done being controlled.